action to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Or Schulman.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rogolina,
Here.
Mushak,
Here.
Lingalis,
Here.
Cantor,
Here.
Jordan Byron,
Present.
Batchnik. Did I say that right?
Tabashnik here.
Wells.
Wells here.
Wells, yes. And Commissioner Bryce.
Here.
Okay. We're, as you know, we have one vacancy and we're missing one full commissioner. So we can seat both Ms. Tabachnik and Mr. Bryce for this matter. And the matter is enforcement action, show cause hearing, APV 23-37, 30 Muller Park Foam Systems, LLC, enforcement order, APV 23-37, and suspension of APA permit number PA 17-02. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Cherachidi.
So the aquifer protection regulations do enforcement a little differently than zoning. And so whenever there is if a staff person issues an order, state statute says that the agency has to hold a show cause hearing. So a hearing that allows the respondent of the enforcement order to show cause or to show you why, any additional evidence why the order should either be withdrawn or modified. And so for the hearing, what I'll do is I'll explain why I issued the order that you received in the packet that I emailed to you, and the reasons for my issuance of the order. And then the respondent and any representatives of the respondent can provide any additional information to you. And then at the end of the night, you would close the show cause hearing and then make a decision whether to uphold the order, or your choices are to either uphold, to modify and uphold, or to withdraw the order. And so that's the process. And I'll get started by sharing my screen and just kind of explaining things. So in my email, I explained that the aquifer protection regulations require that facilities register every 5 years, and facilities that existed at the time of the adoption of the aquifer regulations, which was in 2009, if they were operating at the time of adoption, they were allowed to be grandfathered and register. And by registering, they certify that they are doing best management practices that are outlined in the regulations. And then additionally, in addition to the 5-year registration process, there is a permitting process, and a registered facility can add or change what regulated activities they're doing. There's 28 of them that are defined by the state by applying for a permit. Permits last for only 10 years. So they're different than other permits that once you get a permit, you're kind of good to go. Aquifer permits have a discrete lifespan of 10 years, and then they need to be reapplied for. So this facility previously had a registration. The registration has lapsed and technically expired last July. And then this facility also has a permit, and that permit is still in effect, and it does not expire until 2027, when it will need to be renewed. And just so just for getting your bases, here is Main Avenue Broad cuts across here and Perry at the top of the screen. Here's your Route 7. And Muller Park is wedged between at the top of Perry, and it's accessed off of Broad from Slocum. And so it's this parcel here. It's an industrial park. And the facility in question had a registration to operate in this general location, which is this portion of the parking lot, which has a loading bay here and some parking spaces along here. And then this is considered suite number 19 of the Muller Industrial Park. They were issued a order because of the expansion of their facility, and I'll show photos in a moment, but this is suite, I'm going to get my numbers backwards, 6C, and this is suite 7. So these are other tenant spaces within the industrial park that the facility was using for warehousing of their materials. This facility has a registration and a permit because they do regulated activities. It is a manufacturer of the components for home spray foam insulation. And let me go to some of the site photos. So this is in site 6C. And just to go back, 6C is this front one here. Oops, sorry. Oops. Apologies. And so these are just some photographs of the materials that were being stored. Some of them are not hazardous materials. Some of them are hazardous and toxic. The facility has floor drains. It appears that they've kind of been clogged, but they are floor drains, which is a concern for the aquifer protection area because we don't know where those floor drains drain to. But this kind of gives you an idea of the volume of materials in that first suite, and then in suite 7. And these were all taken July 13th of this summer, so just a few weeks ago. The same kind of situation with storage of a mix of materials, some non-hazardous, some hazardous materials, or toxic materials. So this expansion was not allowed under the registration nor the permit. And then additionally, the facility expanded their operations to do activities within their facility, which includes this parking lot. But their activities included storage of materials within that area, which is not one of the best management practices that's required by the regulations. So these are, again, from mid-July of this year. Some of these containers are empty, and some of them are contain material. The other issue that the order cites is the management of stormwater, and whether the pumping of the stormwater is sufficiently clean to have it be pumped and discharged to the ground. This facility has 2 dry wells on it. There's a dry well within the loading dock bay, and then there is a dry well in the parking lot. Dry wells are simply, they look like a catch basin or a grate at the top of the surface, but instead of going into a pipe and being conveyed to a stormwater system, it goes into a dry well, which is, they can be constructed of different materials, but it's a kind of a pit or a well that is porous and allows water to go into the groundwater to discharge. So during a rain event, a dry well would fill up, and then the water would dissipate into the ground over time. For the aquifer protection area, that's exactly what we do not want. We don't want underground retention particularly in close proximity to any hazardous materials, because what we're trying to protect is the sand and gravel aquifer that's underground that is holding that drinking water supply. So as part of the permit, the registrant or facility owner did plug the grates going into the dry well. This is the dry well in the loading bay. And then this is the dry well that's the top of which is covered in the parking lot. But the closing of those dry wells has led to a problem with the stormwater, some of which is very unclean, being discharged and pumped out onto the ground.
I'm sorry, Alexis, I'm
Yes.
looking at the photographs, the top one in the middle,
Yes.
where it appears most of that grate is covered, but it doesn't look as if the entire grate is covered. It looks like there are holes in the grate.
I would agree, and we can ask the facility owner to describe exactly what's been done in this grate. I do believe that it is no longer operating, and part of that. Let's see if I can find another photo. I'll show you another photo of immediately post a rain event. This loading bay, on this day, there was a truck there unloading, discharging inside the facility, and there was no water there. We do have photographs of it immediately post a rain event, and it fills up like a bathtub nearly all the way. So I do believe that they are constantly pumping it out in order to resolve their standing water issue.
Well, given that they're working with some toxic materials, is there no immediate way to simply make them stop rather than allowing them at least up until now to move forward in a way that threatens the water course?
So I'd say yes. So I will. So that's kind of the conclusion of my photographs.
Mhm.
What the order says is that because the facility currently does not have an aquifer registration, facilities that do not have a registration are prohibited from conducting activities that include any regulated activity, any of these 28 higher risk activities. So what the order says is that they are directed to cease all regulated activities at the site, and that they are not to initiate regulated activities until they have successfully completed a registration application, and they have furthermore met all of the conditions that were attached to the approval of the permit.
But in the meantime, between time that you discovered these problems and now,
Mhm.
Significant harm may have been done. Is there nothing we can do about any harm that they've caused?
You can require testing. So I will say that since we met them at the site on July 13th, and we, meaning zoning, myself and the fire department, they have removed the material from suite 7, from suite C, and from the outdoor area. The fire department was very concerned that the existing sprinkler system was completely inadequate to prevent spread of a fire were a fire to occur. So they put an order on the facility to remove those materials, and they have complied with that.
Okay.
you can certainly, so you can certainly hold them to not continuing to operate until you have to give them the opportunity to re-register and to meet the conditions of their permit, I guess is the short answer. But you can certainly require that they not operate until they meet all the requirements of those.
Okay, so, okay, Anna,
Alexis, oh, go
Anna
ahead.
had-
Sorry.
Anna has a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So in July 2022, their APA certificate expired and an annual inspection was done that determined that you would not issue a new compliance certificate to them.
Correct.
And when you tried to inspect, they wouldn't let you in. Why at that point, or rather, I wasn't on this commission at that point. Was there anything done to bring that to this commission or to sort of halt the stuff at that point?
So I knew someone was going to ask that. So at that point, we had completed our inspection in July 2022. We saw that in Suite 6C, there appeared to be additional containers. We did not issue them a compliance following that inspection. Soon after that inspection, the staff person that was doing the inspections did write them a letter. So I have a letter on our computer network that a notice of violation was issued for failing their inspection and an alert that they would need to re-register. Unfortunately, I don't have any indication that that was actually sent out. That person soon left City Hall employment. So there was a gap of employees and understanding what had been done before they left. So there was definitely a gap there.
If that had been sent out, would you guys have been coming to us at that time to do this process, or this process that we're in something that wouldn't even have been part of the equation a year ago?
So what if the letter had been sent out, and I don't have any paper copies of it, so I don't think that it was. It was just a notice of violation at that point. So it was more of a kind of a heads up. You appear to not be meeting the best management practices of the regulations. Please get your ducks in a row and come back to us. And that would not prompt a show cause hearing. If the facility had received that letter and had not complied with any of those directives, it would have been bumped up to an order, which is the same as what you're seeing tonight.
Okay, Nick and then Tammy.
So sort of going off of Lou's question, do we have any sense of how much the aquifer has been impacted, and I'll say poisoned for lack of a better word here, by the toxins from this location?
So the aquifer, no, is the very short answer. No, I don't. The aquifer protection program is not a spill response program, but it is kind of this best management practices it's stronger than a pledge, a required certification by registrants that they are doing a list of best management practices that are meant to greatly reduce any potential hazardous material release to the aquifer. The conduct that we observed at the site, going from having forklifts go from this the registered facility in the front of the building, driving forklifts down the parking area to the rear of the building, crossing over multiple unprotected dry wells, storing material outside that's exposed to weather and the elements. These are all practices that are counter to best management practices required by the regulations. So was the facility operating in a way that was not permitted, not within the realm of best management practices? Absolutely. Do I have any indication that there was an active spill that would have triggered a DEP spill response? No. Again, the objective is required preventative measures, not necessarily spill response.
Okay, Tammy and then JJ.
Thank you. Good evening, Alexis. I think I just need a little bit of clarification. You kind of answered it in your remark right now, but in the top center photo, there's a truck with some type of a hose that's pumping this toxic chemical, for lack of a better term, into the white plastic and metal framed structure. Is that right?
Yes, I don't know what exactly is being pumped. If I scroll down, this is the other end of the hose being pumped into one of these containers.
Okay, and so let's just for the moment assume that it's a toxic substance. If they pumped it inside and it spilled, where would it go? And then outside is the bottom right picture has that disc over what looks like to be the same storm drain as the one that Lou mentioned up above, where it looks like some type of fabric has been put underneath the grate, and now it looks like some sort of metal plate has been put over the grate. Is that the same grate? And would you guys be okay with that? Is that the solution, or is that just a Band-Aid?
Okay. So yes,
saying?
yes, this grate is within the loading bay, and the back of this truck is the same as the back of this truck, which is behind this row of containers.
Mhm.
And then it is pumping from the truck into just inside the facility into this this container. The facility in its registration is required to have secondary containment, so that if any or all of these containers stored within the side of the facility were to fail, there was enough secondary containment that any spills would be kept within the building. And so their building has a certain square footage, and they have put in, he's actually standing on it, a lip at the loading bay. And their engineer has said that for the amount of materials they were that they claimed to have on the registration, for that amount, the floor area of the facility with this lip is sufficient to meet the containment requirements. So as long as
That's fine, Alexis, for if that end of the pipe fails, but if the other end of the pipe fails, it's outside.
right, and that is absolutely the concern.
Okay,
And that is why when you issued your aquifer protection permit in 2017, it came with a condition that the facility owner had to come up with a design that would figure out the removal of the stormwater from the loading bay area in such a way that meets all those best management practices.
okay. All right, JJ, and then Chapin, I think I saw your hand raised also. No? Okay, just JJ.
Okay, good evening. I actually have two questions, so I'll make it quick. The first one is there a monetary fee for the violation of compliance? And if so, has it been collected, or has it been made to order in terms of collecting it from this client?
So there is no enforcement fine mechanism in Aquifer. We don't have a citation and fine process. That would need to be approved by council. In the fee schedule for the fees for the various applications for registration or for permit. There are your regular registration applications, and then there is a corrective action registration fee, which is roughly twice the amount of the base fee. So kind of is the answer. In the order, it directs the respondent to file for a corrective action registration application.
Okay.
Alexis,
And-
can we ask? Oh, I'm sorry, JJ, you said you had
No,
two questions.
Well, okay, okay, so go ahead, because I just have another question that's different. So go ahead, Blue.
I was simply going to ask if you or if you have any staff people could survey other coastal communities and determine what other tools they have available to them that we might be able to adopt in order to give us a little more muscle.
I can certainly ask. So there is a group of towns that have active aquifer areas that are actively. They often actually turn to Norwalk. Norwalk was the first to issue a permit, the first to issue a notice of violation, first to issue an order. But I can definitely ask around, and I do often ask the. I am in communication with the state's aquifer protection person, asking her advice and trying to kind of parcel out how to make this work the best that it can.
Okay.
But yes, I will. That's a good
Thank you.
recommendation.
Okay, JJ, go ahead, and then Mike.
Right, and so my second question was, assuming that all the testing took place inside of the perimeter of the violation site, has there been any testing outside the perimeter?
So no testing has occurred on the site or outside of the site. Just to
And why not?
clarify. So I don't have the authority to require testing, although you through your reissuing or reaccepting of the aquifer registration and the reinstatement of the permit, you can require testing, particularly of the pumped water that is in the loading bay. I think that that's a reasonable thing that you can require to kind of confirm that it's not contaminated before it's discharged to the ground. I'd have clear evidence of the lack of best management practices. I'm not saying that there has been a spill, and if there were a spill, that would require the state spill response team to come and react.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If we required that, it would be kind of like the way the commission in the past required that they come up with a plan for the stormwater management and then didn't for 10 years. I don't know,
Right.
my math is bad.
Right.
So like,
yes.
how do we make sure that permit or registration special requirements get done? I'm just curious.
So the registration has different appendices. For a lot of registered sites, a stormwater plan is not required because it's fairly obvious when you go to a site if there's stormwater issues or not. You can require for any registration a engineered certified stormwater management plan, and for this property or facility, I would recommend that. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. Hi, Alexis. The well field, Deering well field has monitoring, I believe, from what I can recall, from the Superfund site on Main Avenue. Is that ongoing? Are we aware of the results of that ongoing testing? Because I think they had to test for decades,
Yes.
right? And I remember years ago when, like 2009, there was a discussion, and then there was another, of that, and then there was an application for that site. That was an issue brought up. Then you wouldn't have been aware of that, I guess, because you were, that really was addressed by planning and zoning, the two commissions at the time. And then, and I wasn't on either one of those commissions at the time. I remember the first application, or the second application that came through. Then, and that's for I think the BJ's site is what people are calling it, but who knows what's going on there now. It's still an empty site. But is that ongoing? Is that something we can tap into in terms of for the pun, but I mean, tap into the results to just see if that has changed at all, if the state's aware of that? And also, what would be the best management to deal with those drains? I remember a gas station in the aquifer protection had like a grease separator in their storm drains because fuel rises. It's lighter than water. So it would float to the top of the drains and then that would get pumped out. But is this the same kind of system? Are you aware of? It might be an engineering question that you might not be able to answer, but I'm just curious, how is that handled, the secondary containment and an outdoor drain that goes into a dry well?
Okay, there were a lot of questions here, Mike.
Yeah, I know.
So the first one is, the Superfund site still exists. There are monitoring wells that are still being tested. That's being monitored by the EPA. I don't have easy access to those, to that information until it's kind of published. I don't know if it would necessarily be helpful for identifying an additional source of spills. But it is an unfortunate location-wise that it is within the aquifer protection area. And then for your other two questions, yes, that would be a good answer. That would be something that you should require a professional engineer to satisfactorily answer. How do we make sure that there isn't contamination of the groundwater supply? And again, I think that they have shown that they're going to have to update for the amount of material that they've had if it's changed within their tenant space. But they did have a professional engineer certify their secondary containment, but there has not been a stormwater plan that adequately deals with the accumulated stormwater and as you can see in the photos, the lack of kind of cleanliness of that stormwater. And
so good, thank you. That answered my question. Because we don't know if these toxic materials might be heavier than water, and it would be a different system than what a gas station would use.
right, it's not a petroleum product, right?
Right, and it seems to me the logical solution, and maybe that's not, but I'm just throwing something out there, is that everything would have to occur inside where stormwater would not be exposed to any material from pumping from a truck. So you would have to have a covered loading dock, basically, to do any transferring, because as soon as you're anywhere where it rains, the stormwater becomes an issue, and that's a huge amount of stormwater to have to store, obviously, in a heavy rain, and
Yes.
just think about it. I mean, it's a lot of water in a parking lot to have to contain and then pump, and truck away or whatever. I mean, it just doesn't seem practical to me.
Yes, and those were some of the solutions that were discussed during the 2017 permit discussion, either covering the loading bay, removing the loading bay, a variety of options were tossed around.
Thank you.
Galen?
Alexis,
Galen, go ahead.
We can require them to do testing though, can't we, Alexis? Didn't I hear you say that?
Yes, you just have to define testing of, what?
Testing the
exactly?
groundwater to see if there's been a release, to see if there's been contamination? That's
Um,
logical next step to me.
I would recommend that you keep your, I can certainly reach out to Deep and ask them to do a further kind of check to make sure that there's no indication of a spill. But as the Aquifer agency, I would recommend that you stick to spill prevention methods. So again, if there is a spill that is deep, and kind of your job as the agency is to ensure that the facility is operating in a way that minimizes spills to the very best of their ability. So if
We can call in Deep, can't we? I'm sorry.
yes, we can absolutely, I can absolutely call in Deep and ask them, if they want to review the any of the monitoring wells that they do have in this area. If they have any concerns, I can send them the photographs and alert them that we've taken action. The Aquifer Division of Deep does know that we are taking this enforcement action.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
We
any
just
other
have to decide whether to sort of uphold what you said the two directions are as
Yes.
written or not,
So-
or modify it. Okay.
Once you're done with questions, the respondent still does have an opportunity to give you information too. And then, yes.
okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Just quickly, Lou, so Alexis, I don't think I answered about that cover that you see in your photograph. Is that actually preventing anything from going into that dry well, whether it's water or any of their things that they're pumping?
Find working on, let me just find a photo. Okay. Let me just go through. This is what it looks like today. So this is kind of the loading bay, and you can tell it's not clear water and it's being pumped out. This is the parking lot. Here we go. This is sorry. This is a 2017 photo of, this is inside the loading bay. This is that grate. And so inside of it is a basin, and then it has an outlet that goes directly to the parking lot and discharges into another second dry well. And so I believe that this is still capped. And then additionally, they have a filter fabric and then the grate on top of it. But again, that would definitely be something that you can require a full stormwater management report to confirm that the truly capped condition is sound.
Thank you.
Yes.
These conditions on both what you just mentioned and on the testing are things that are conditions of the re-registration, not of the order. Is that right?
The kind of both.
Okay,
Yes, so the order directs the respondent to immediately cease all regulated activities, and that regulated activities are prohibited until the agency determines the facility is successfully registered and in full compliance with the requirements of the registration application and permit, the existing permit from 2017. And then further, the facility owner is directed to submit a new complete aquifer corrective action registration application, and that registration must include all the information and certifications required by the aquifer regulations, including a complete stormwater management plan. So
Okay.
those are the two directives of the order.
Okay, Alexis, still in your court.
Okay, so I think I've talked enough. That is, in a nutshell, why I have issued both the cease and desist order to stop, and then a suspension of the permit until that condition to sort out the stormwater management is met.
I
So
guess,
that is it for me, and so I'd advise now giving the floor to the facility owner and representatives.
Here, if I can, Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzio LLC, to speak for the respondent.
sure, go ahead.
Thanks, chairs, commissioners. Good to be before you tonight on this. Also want to thank Alexis. She's been very helpful through this process, and responsive and trying to help us resolve and move forward. Just, go through the order and the violations that are mentioned, but I just want to kind of assure the commission of a couple things. One, that all regulated activities have ceased on the site. So those have ended. And then, not to jump ahead, but because it was a topic of conversation or that was just spoke a lot about. So that there, as required, there's dry wells there. And I think Alexis was saying this, that you wouldn't want anything to get into those dry wells. So she showed the cap that was there on the photo from 2017. And then also there's a material, and Chair, I think you pointed this out in the picture, that it looks like when you look from the top that there's some area of it that's open, but there's actually, the fabric is underneath the grate. So it is blocking the water from going in. And if I could show a photo here, I think I should have the ability to share. But I think you also see it in the picture that Alexis showed. The fact that it's filling up with rainwater shows that it's working. It's preventing anything from going into the dry well. So I just want to make that clear. The other thing is, and here I could show this on my screen, right there. So as you can see, because the dry well is properly blocked, it's filling up with rainwater, and so it is not going into the dry well. The other thing is that tanker that you saw in the pictures, that does not have toxic material in it. That tanker does not carry toxic material. So it goes in the loading bay and it's pumping out. That's not toxic material. That's handled inside, and there are spill protection plans. When it originally went for the permit, there was a material management plan that was submitted about how those materials are handled, and it's within the building. Those totes that you saw on the outside were those totes are drip dried out before they're placed outside. So I just wanted to address those off the top. But the order, the first part of the order talks about stopping operations and regulated activities in those units 6C and 7, which Alexis showed in the beginning. those units have been cleared out of the hazardous materials. Some pictures here, I can run through some of these pictures here. So this is what 6C and 7 look like now. So we've addressed, sorry, it's selecting multiple photos. Let me switch here. So we've removed the storage of those materials in those 2 units to hopefully satisfy the violation that Alexis listed in number 1 in her order. The second was with regards to outdoors and the storage of materials outdoors. That has also been removed. Show you another photo here. See right here, it's been removed. There was a couple remaining totes here, but those have since been removed. So we removed all the totes from the outdoor area. So it's just back into the original area. And again, we've ceased activities there, so there's no activities going on at this time. I have been in contact with Alexis to try to address the other 2 remaining issues. The one being that water that is collecting outside the loading bay. So we'll continue to work with her to whether it's a stormwater management plan or something to provide that to satisfy her concerns. But again, just so you know, those dry wells are plugged. That's why it fills up with rainwater. And the tanker that you saw in that photo does not carry toxic material.
Attorney Russo,
Yes.
can you address why these violations occurred in the first place?
Unfortunately, this use is a permitted use there, right? And it received a zoning approval, and it received a permit from Aquifer Protection. The facility received a certificate of compliance after an inspection on August 26, 2020. So it had been found previously to be
Aquifer compliance.
correct, Aquifer compliance. Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry if I misstated that. But so it had, unfortunately, we did have somebody, a manager who was overseeing this facility, who I think definitely failed in addressing, because there was also the fire department had expressed some things that they wanted to get undressed. And my client had been led to believe that these issues were being handled with the city. We subsequently found out that they weren't. That manager is no longer employed with the company. And since then, my client has jumped onto it. Now, it's not the problem of the city, that we have management issues, but that was the reality of the situation. And so since then, we have been trying to address these issues. We had been working with the fire department. There was a lot of work that had already been done as far as the fire department had asked us to update the electrical on the site to code. We did that. And we jumped on that immediately. It was one of their top concerns. And we had been working with them on addressing these issues. And then we come to find out that there were other things with the town that just had not been followed through and completed. And certain things like the registration, which should have been applied for an extension. I think as Alexis noted, it goes until 2027, but in last year, we should have asked for an extension. That wasn't done, which is something we're now trying to fix. But that's unfortunately what happened. And since, I've been working with not only Alexis, but the zoning department and with the fire department in trying to address all these issues. We're trying to make sure that this use and the operation of this facility is fully permitted and has all everything it needs. And we've already, again, addressed, I think, which were the 2 to stop the major violations, make sure one, regulated activity stop, and that these materials are removed from areas that they shouldn't be. We got on that immediately because that seemed to be the greatest concern, and did that, completed that, and now we're just working through these other issues and addressing them, including the filing for the registration. I believe we're just waiting for the owner of the property to now sign off on that so we could submit that and address what's number 4 on the violation order. So we're actively working to address it. But, you know, again, just to be clear, it is a use that's allowed in the zone. It had a permit from Aquifer Protection. It had received a certificate of compliance at one point. It's just unfortunately under these past few years, things weren't followed through and completed as they should have been. And now we're looking to resolve that. And there's been no spill on the site, because I know that was mentioned. There has been no spill on the site. And again, that tanker, it doesn't have toxic material, just to kind of assure the commission that there hasn't been any harm done to the aquifer.
Are there other questions for Attorney Russo? Mike?
Yeah, the floor drain that Alexis had shown a picture of with a question of not sure where that goes, is that addressed in your engineer's report that stated that all the interior could hold all a potential spill, you know, because that was mentioned? And that's one question. Second question is really to Alexis, is that you said that the 2017 permit required certain conditions, like all transfer of material would be undercover. So is that happening? Does a truck driving that you can see the garage door look high enough to drive a truck into? Is that where transfer, I mean, because you are transferring toxic material, I would imagine, back and forth from trucks. Is that all happening? In other words, is the 2017 requirement being met? And the engineer's report, did they address just to repeat the first question, because I have a habit of asking a lot of questions. The first question was, does that floor drain, was that included in the engineer's report?
Right, and so when the facility owner reapplies for a registration, they will need to include, again, it's basically every time it's a new 5-year registration. So they will need to include the professional engineer, the material management plan that includes both the location of the storage of hazardous materials and a process map that shows where those hazardous materials are moved around and transferred. And I'd encourage for clarity, because of the high volume of chemicals that this facility is operating with, to further explain the other parts of what is transferred outside, just so that it's clear when if you drive by, you often see a tanker truck providing some sort of material to the facility. And so I think it would be helpful to clarify that is happening, but it is, and confirming that it is not a part of your regulated activity. It's not a hazardous material that's being transferred there. So all of the questions that you asked, Mike, should be, you should be sure that those are addressed in the new registration materials that are going to be provided.
Thank you. Thanks.
And Commissioner, just so you know, because you asked the question, the transfer is indoors of those materials, and they're not pumped, so they come in already in the drums, and so there's no pumping of that. So but the transfer into the facility happens indoors, and that was something, when we originally applied, there was a material management plan, but as Alexis is saying, we will submit now another one, and we can add the clarification about what is being pumped from the tankers and everything. So so more fully understand the operations there.
Chapin?
Thank you. I think that might address one of my questions, which was if you could describe a bit about what the material was in the tanker. I have two more, but I'll just go one at a time. Can you describe a bit more about what material is in the tanker?
I don't know what the material is that's in the tanker. We would certainly be happy to provide that information. I think it's polyethers and polyesters is what I,
Okay.
but they are not toxic.
Okay.
I don't know what they are, but they're not toxic.
Okay. What is it? I guess I had four questions. Sorry, I missed one. What does it mean by dry drip? Can you describe what that process is and what that entails to empty out the containers that are stored outside?
I don't know if someone from Thermoseal could pop on and explain what that means. But my understanding is that it's just it's a process to make the totes dry before you would dry material before you would move it out. But that's just a layman's interpretation of that. But
Chris,
so
I can answer that very quickly for them just to make it
Richard,
clear.
can you identify yourself before you
Oh,
get
I'm
into
sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm Richard Ettinger. I guess I am the owner of Foam Systems and started this process about 5 years ago with the town of Norwalk.
and so can you explain the drip dry?
Yeah, so what happens is totes are put on a forklift and they're lifted and they're tilted forward, so everything drips out into another tote so we can reuse it. And we try not to waste one drop because the materials are very expensive. So you don't want to waste anything. So it's a process that the guys know how to do and do. But that's what drip dry means. They're tilted forward and then everything drips out as much as you can possibly get out because it's very expensive.
Thank you, Mr. Ettinger. Quick follow-up on that is that activity happens inside with the forklift?
That happens inside the facility.
Great. And is there a risk of when those are stored outside, it like rehydrating or having any sort of like runoff from those containers while they're outside?
No, because when you untilt them, nothing can come out. So
Okay.
like they're empty. Is there residue on the plastic in the containers? Probably, but rainwater can't get into them because they're capped. And we try to do the right thing. We assumed that nothing could get out, and we believe nothing could get out ever. But we drip dry them because every drop of material is very expensive.
Thank you. The other two questions, one of them is in the picture where you showed that the outdoor area has been cleared, looked like there was a line of water that trailed from the fence line towards the building. Are you able to identify what that was?
I don't know if somebody else.
I can't answer that one. So
Ray, you gotta,
I-
sorry, Ray, before you get into it, you gotta identify yourself.
Yep, sorry, I'm Ray Delgado. I'm the current warehouse manager for Thermoseal.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so what you see there is we actually had another sump pump there, which had a hose, which was filled with water. That was just one of the guys dragging the sump pump to the dock to start the process of emptying it because it rained the night before.
Okay, and that's referring to the loading dock. The sump pump is being used in there to empty that space out. Is that right?
Correct.
Understood. Thank you. And I think this might go to Ms. Cherichetti. The applicants, are they required to have mitigations in their registration and permits for all owned properties or just where the hazardous areas are? And let me clarify that a little bit. All operated properties within the aquifer protection area or just those that are handling hazardous materials?
So only the facilities that were able to register as registered facilities when the aquifer regulations were adopted are required to meet all these best management practices. Any other facility within the APA area that wasn't in existence or took over a pre-existing registration is prohibited from doing any regulated activities within the aquifer protection area. So if they're doing any of
okay.
those 28, they have to either be registered or they'll be getting a violation.
Understood.
Otherwise, they are prohibited.
Okay, thank you.
Right, Attorney Russo, anything else?
No, that's it. Chair, commissioners, thank you for the time. We are working as quickly as we can to address these issues. We appreciate the support from staff and the help from staff in trying to resolve them quickly. Again, we're stopping. We're ceasing all activities until we're able to provide the information needed and make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted for this operation to then be able to resume.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Alexis?
Chairman, I have one comment that I would like to make before we close.
Sure, go ahead, Richard.
This company came before the Aquifer Commission to get a permit, so I'm going to assume that you all know what an aquifer is. I also believe that the citizens of Norwalk and some of the surrounding areas get their water from 3 different places, and this is one of them. So in addition to satisfying what Alexis wants, sorry, what Alexis wants and, what's the letter of the law, just keep in mind that everybody sitting on this commission lives in Norwalk and some of us are drinking it. That's all.
Thank you, Richard. Is there anything else, Alexis?
No, that is it for me.
Okay, then can you put the order up?
Yes.
We'll close the hearing and we'll move to action. So this is discussion and decision APV 23-3730 Muller Park Foam Systems LLC. And this is enforcement order APV 23-37 and suspension of APA permit number PA 17-02. Alexis, can you make that a little larger for our older eyes? Thank you.
I'll scroll down to
Okay.
the directives. So I don't know where you want to start. So these are the two directives to stop all regulated activity and to submit a complete registration application by September 20th, 2023. And then I can scroll up. There are the 4 reasons why the order was issued.
Okay.
So Alexis, just to make sure I'm following, we can't add anything about further testing in this order. That would come on the reapplication.
Yes, I think and depending on the solutions for the management of the loading bay, you can, if the proposal is to continue to pump and then discharge to the ground waters, then you can require confirmation that those waters are not contaminated as a best management practice. Yes. But
And is this where we would,
at this juncture, no.
and is this where we would put the comment about getting deep further involved if we wanted to?
I will call Deep tomorrow morning to confirm that they know. So again, there's different layers, just like this. There's the city. Deep has different divisions. The Aquifer Protection Department knows that this has been issued, but I will also reach out to the Spill Prevention Bureau just to again, I don't have any indication of a spill, but I will let them know that the Norwalk APA has taken action against a facility. Yes.
And Alexis, just to be clear, you'll be coming before us again when you are comfortable that they've met the requirements?
Yes, so hopefully soon after September 20th, when things are submitted, registration applications have to be accepted by you. And then I will be looking at it to make sure that it is complete. Absolutely.
Okay,
I have one more question for Alexis, if I may move.
sure, go ahead.
Is there any regulatory body that checks the aquifer water, regardless of this applicant that we have in front of us, on a regular basis?
Yes, so your first taxing district is the public water supplier that uses, they have wells that drill into the aquifer, and those wells are used for drinking water. The first taxing district is required to do continual testing and other testing all the time. So the first taxing district water department was notified. They were sent certified return receipt notice of the order, and then I've also emailed them to confirm that they received notice of the order. They would obviously be the most impacted if there were a spill. It is their resource and the cost of making that resource clean enough to be potable that they are focused on. So they will be testing, and I'm sure that if something does arise in the water that is, I mean, these are somewhat specific chemicals, that they would take action to cover their finances.
Okay, and to your knowledge, as of tonight, that has not been done?
The first taxing district did not relay any concerns or alerts to me that their testing had revealed any change to their drinking water supply.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve this order?
I'll make the motion, Lou. Tammy?
Okay, so
And I'll
Tammy
second it.
and Richard has seconded. Any further discussion?
One
right.
other, I just have one quick question, Lou, or
Go ahead,
discussion
Nick.
point. It sounded from Alexis's comments that there's no penalty for the actions that have occurred because at council, like city council level, there was no ordinance that would enact some sort of penalty. I would just ask if we could forward this case along to council saying maybe it's time they actually create an ordinance, because it seems such like something we should have on the books. Anyway, that's just a comment there, Alexis, if that's, I don't know who the right grouping at council is, but this just feels like a hole that we can close up.
Okay.
Thank you. Alexis, let's do a roll call on this.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see you.
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion was to uphold the order, and I'll just go in order of your screen, if that's all right.
Sure,
So
that's,
okay, Schulman,
yes.
Rowena,
Yes.
Mushak,
Yes.
Lingalis,
Yes.
Bryce,
Yes.
Cantor,
Yes.
Wells,
Yes.
Jordan Byron,
Yes.
and Tabachnik.
Very good.
Sorry, Hannah.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. With that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move.
Okay, and Chapin has moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Richard has seconded. With a show of hands, all those in favor? It's unanimous. This has taken us a good deal longer than we had anticipated. Would you like to take a 10-minute break before we convene the meeting of the